This program is brought to you by UCKG.
Hi, my name is Michael Ikinle, and on tonight's show, I'm going to be sharing with you how I overcame my financial struggles, how I became financially independent, and if you want to learn how to reach your financial goals, make sure that you tune in tonight. See you there.
Good evening and welcome to Finding Answers. How can you have a prominent and successful career? Well, tonight's guest, Michael, will be disclosing here with you the secrets of a very, very successful career. Today, he's a very successful man in his career in what he does. But life has not always been sweet to Michael. As an immigrant, he migrated to this country looking for a better life, but he found many, many obstacles. He had to face many setbacks, such as bullying. He had to adapt to the culture. He had to get along with his peers. He had to forgive his father because he was brought up by his mother and he did not have a father figure to help him. And Carlos, I believe that, there is so much that we can learn from tonight's story.
Definitely. This young man who, like you mentioned, he came here to this country. Everything was new for him and a lot of challenges, had to forgive his father. He was brought up by a single parent, which is a challenge for, many young people here. We know that. And he discovered the power of faith. You see, that's the greatness of his testimony, because it was through the power of faith that he was able to overcome. Because even though he had skills, he got graduated and so on, but it was through faith that he was able to see the whole transformation.
We watched now a testimony, a story of somebody who discovered the power of faith and they experienced a new life.
One issue that I used to really have was problems sleeping at night. For about 9 years straight, I would literally be having the same nightmare on and off, on and off. And it was a very weird but almost realistic nightmare. So it was like the area I would live in would morph into something different. And then I would end up being chased by black figures, like just running through my area. I would recognize like key spots of, where I lived in this nightmare. And so what would happen, for me to get to sleep, I would be rocking myself back and forth like my head, just so it would rock me to sleep. I couldn't sleep without music and the television on. So for me, it took me a very long time, and then before I knew it, I wouldn't know what time it is and I have to wake up and I'm going to school. And this would happen for on and off 9 years. And for me, it was very difficult because it got to a point where I was so scared to walk through my area. And there was a particular part of this area where in the dream, I would literally be faced with this big black figure and it would chase me all the way back home. So because of this part of the nightmare, I wouldn't be able to go to this particular area in my own area. I wouldn't be able to go through that place. I would take another route, the long way round, just so that I wouldn't go to that area. Even in the dream, it felt so real. It's like I could almost touch myself and feel but I would wake up and I would know that, it was just a dream. And it would always end the same way. So for me, it was like, if it's almost kind of repetitive, it must be real. And there was even cases where I would sleepwalk. So I would go to the bathroom, I would turn the tap on, I would knock down the bike in the corridor, I would do many things, but be fully unconscious of what I'm doing. All these things I only knew because my mum would witness me doing it, or she would wake up and she would see that the bathroom had been run. Once, me and my mum, we went on holiday, and we obviously had to share the same bed. And I ended up beating her up in my sleep. So she woke up with scratches all over her, and she was like, "Louise, you just attacked me at night." And I was like, but I didn't know. I felt so guilty inside of me. I was like, I would never want to hurt my mum, even though we didn't really have a good relationship the way that I wanted it at that time. I never dreamt of even hurting her. So when I saw that, I felt like a monster. But even though it wasn't me, I just felt like a monster. And even at times I would have dreams of like pushing my mum down the stairs. It was terrible. So for me, it was like, I didn't want to sleep. So when I went to university, things got worse because, you know, late night partying and you're up all night or you're studying. So you become restless. And for me, the only time I could sleep was during the day. I couldn't sleep at night. I couldn't. I'd be up maybe till 6 o'clock knowing that I had lectures, but I couldn't sleep. And it got to a point where once I was so tired that I completely passed out during the day. I missed my lectures, I missed everything, I was gone. To a point where people were so worried they had to break into my room. And they broke into my room and I was still sleeping. And then they woke me up, they were like, Louise, like, where have you been? And I was just like, I've just been sleeping. And for me, that was really one of the worst moments for me because it was like anyone could have just come into my room and attacked me. I was so vulnerable, I didn't even know what to think. Thank goodness it was, you know, people who were actually kind of looking after me in a sense. But for me, that was one of the worst moments, and that attacking my mum at night because, again, I never would have intentionally ever wanted to harm her. But when I saw those cuts, it even hurt me personally, it did. There was nothing to tell me, oh, this is not right, this is not normal. It was just normality to me. It's only when I came to the church, I was coming to the Friday meetings where I understood that, okay, these nightmares, these things that I'm doing in my sleep, it's not me. And I started to understand the roots behind it. And it's funny because even as I started attending the Friday meetings, I had these nightmares again, they came up. But the funny thing is I remember the very last time I had this nightmare because I remember I went that night just so kind of angry that all these years I had been experiencing it and I finally understood what was behind it. So I remember doing like a very strong prayer on me saying, it's not gonna be no more. But that night I had the nightmare, but it ended differently because usually in the nightmare, I would run to my house, I would be like dodging all these dark figures, but I would run to my house and the door would not close properly. It wouldn't close. So it was a thing where it was like, I would close the door behind me, but you could see outside. It was very strange. But this very last nightmare, I'll never forget, the door closed. And for me, it was like I woke up believing that I had been set free. I knew that that was the last time I was gonna have that nightmare, and I didn't have it again. I didn't have it again. So from then, I started to have more peaceful sleeps. I didn't have to rock myself. Even now, I'm at a point where if the light is on, I'm like, turn it off. Like, trust me, it doesn't take long for me to sleep at all. I sleep peacefully and probably sleep too much sometimes, but honestly, I don't have no more nightmares. I don't sleepwalk. I don't attack people in my sleep. I'm not scared to go through that area. I'm free, so yeah.
One more amazing testimony that shows the genuine power of faith. That's the evidence that faith does work when you hear about faith and put faith into practice. And if you want to watch any previous episodes of this program, by all means you can do so. Just visit us on YouTube. If you go to YouTube, on the search bar, type Finding Answers. You're going to come across our YouTube channel, subscribe to it, like the channel, and there you are going to find all the previous episodes of this program in HD quality. We are also on social media, Facebook, Instagram. Just search for Finding Answers. And if you've got any questions about this show, or if you like to include your name in our prayer request, you can call our number. The number is 020-7686-6300. Alternatively, you can send an email to help@findinganswers.tv and we will reply to your email as soon as possible. Okay? Well, I'm so excited, Carlos, because we are about to interview Michael, and I believe that, you know, this viewer will have a great learning experience with some lessons that will be taught by Michael himself?
Definitely. With this testimony, you will see that it is possible. It is possible for you to overcome the difficulties, the barriers that he also encountered here when he came, as an immigrant, coming from abroad. Everything was new for him. And maybe, I'm sure that as we are talking here, many of our viewers are immigrants.
Yeah.
You don't know what to do because you find like everything here is new for you. There is this barrier of the language and so many other obstacles, of course. But stay with us. As you watch this testimony, I'm sure that your faith is going to come alive.
Yes. So let's now go to the short break. We'll be back with you shortly. Welcome back to Find the Answers, and today we are going to be talking with Michael, who is our guest of tonight's show, and he's got an amazing story to share with you guys. How are you, Michael?
Hi, Douglas. I'm well. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Michael, how was your life before you have found the power of faith?
Okay, before I found the power of faith, I wasn't obviously born here. So I came from Africa. I came from Nigeria, to be more specific, which was pretty difficult in itself in terms of living. In terms of day-to-day living, it was just very, very difficult to live. I would say a sustainable life, a normal life. So everything was a struggle, and I grew up there for a few years. Then I came here to the UK. And again, it was still a struggle because you can imagine the kind of barriers I would face, coming from back home, barriers in regards to immigration, language barriers, and also because I was still very, very young, so I was still fairly vulnerable. So kind of growing up in a kind of single parent household, you can imagine things were strained. I had family members that were abroad, so my mom was not just supporting me, was trying to support my brother as well, who was, back in Africa and back in Nigeria, which again was very, very difficult. So that was, kind of how my life was. I grew up, I would say, normally here, went to school, studied. I wasn't always the best academically. It's just reality. I just wasn't always the best academically. So I guess that was also very, very challenging because you're constantly comparing yourself to people around you. So maybe when I was in school, I was always comparing myself to my peers because they were always doing better than me. So then I guess you inhabit a sense of, complex. You kind of start to develop certain insecurities about yourself, which I did. So the kind of thoughts and feelings of I'm not good enough, I don't know if I can be someone in life, these guys are way better than me. So when you're always constantly comparing yourself, you start to feel more and more inferior. So that was slightly how things were growing up, going to school and so on and so forth. And also I would say before I actually started to learn about the power of faith and so on, having the employment, the market itself wasn't very buoyant in terms of, jobs that were suitable for me. So that was also very, very challenging because you're always having to go through the whole process. It's not just finding a job, you have to find the right job for you. And then when you find the right job, it's like, okay, do you have the right experience? So you have to face that barrier as well. So things were very, very challenging in that respect in terms of, being able to, I guess, stand up for yourself and sell yourself in the right way for you to be considered as a legible candidate for whatever job you're going for. So it was always very, very challenging. And then you have, kind of racial barriers to a certain extent. you have you have experience barriers, so many different things. Subliminally, like the racial thing is never something that would be, I guess, broadcasted, or it's never going to be a reason an employer would be like, we're not considering you. But you genuinely, in the back of your mind, you genuinely, like when you go to interviews, for example, or when you go to assessment centers, the majority of people there were just like, you were always kind of the minority ethically. Ethnicity wise, I was always kind of the minority. So it was just one of those ones where that's another barrier you have to deal with. So that was pretty much how things were growing up. Before I found the power of faith, I was still young. So I hadn't experienced all of life yet. But I would say before I really found the power of faith, I would say that's pretty much how my life was. It was a struggle. It was a struggle at home. Sometimes things were so difficult. I sometimes stole from my mum, for example. So that was obviously brought strain in my house, as you can imagine. Got in lots and lots of trouble.
And Michael, if you don't mind, to ask you this question, since you spoke about, you came from Africa.
Yeah.
So I can imagine, obviously, to start a life here in the UK, you had to adapt. You said that you would compare yourself to, other kids at school. You said that you couldn't see yourself really good enough, no. Right? When comparing to them. How many siblings do you have?
I have two.
Two?
Yeah.
So did they come together when you first came here?
No, they didn't have the opportunity to do so because my older brother was too old, so he basically wasn't granted a visa to enter.
So was there a reason why, for example, you mentioned that there was a kind of preference from your mom? Was it because they were still in Africa?
Yeah, I guess so, to a certain extent. I think ideally it would have been, because my brother is from my mom's side, my sister is from my dad's side. Mm-hmm. So I think ideally, my mom would have wanted both of us to come over. But I think because of obviously the restriction on my brother in terms of his age, he wasn't able to come here. One of us had to come. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't too much say it was, my mom preferred me to come over my brother. Mm-hmm. I would more say it's more because he just wasn't allowed to because he was just too old. So mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. You mentioned that you had been brought up by a single parent.
Yes.
Who brought you up?
My mom did.
So was your dad not in the picture?
He was, but he wasn't, because I've never really felt like I've had a relationship with him. So maybe like in my really early days, like my really infant days, he might have been there, in and out. But as I was growing up, and it's worth mentioning that I wasn't always living with my mom and my dad, by the way. So when I was really, really young, up till about 10 years old, I was living with a guardian. So my mom actually not left me. I don't want to say like she left me to just rot. She just left because mm-hmm. she had to find a better job in better conditions, like better economic conditions, basically. So she spent the early part of her career in Saudi Arabia, and she was obviously sending money to the person that was looking after me, to look after me on a daily basis. My dad was just, there were not really anywhere to be seen, which I don't know why, but just really wasn't anywhere to be seen. And as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, when I was coming over here to the UK, he had the option to come with us, with my mum, but he chose not to. Mm-hmm. So again, when I came here, I didn't grow up with a father figure either. So yeah, that was very difficult.
Which might have made things a lot worse.
It did. Because
you see, Carlos, that's a staggering problem in this country where, every 1 out of 4 children in this country, okay, 4 out of 1, or actually 1 out of 4, they have been brought up by a single parent. Mm-hmm. And, when you don't have your parents, at the early stages of your life, that will certainly affect your way of thinking, your mindset, your decisions. You are a father, you got a son, so you can tell. I mean, I haven't got any children. But I was brought up by a single parent. Actually, I was brought up by my mother. I did not have a father figure either. So I know what it feels like, wanting to have a man whom you can look up to as a reference, but you don't have any.
And especially because of what he mentioned, that there were a lot of insecurities there, because everything was new for him here in this country. Obviously, like he mentioned, that he would compare himself to other kids, coming to the UK, who probably, supposedly they, let's say they had better skills of learning than you.
Yeah.
And yes, developed some insecurities inside of him. And I believe that this is something to add to the situation, to the problem, right? Yeah.
Now, tell me one thing, Michael, as far as you can remember, going through this situation, coming to a different country, having to deal with the barriers language, the culture, because it's a completely different culture, and all the other, factors that contributed, to things, obviously to get from bad to worse. What was the lowest moment of your life? That moment where you realized that you really needed to seek help somewhere?
I was still, I would say, relatively young. I think for me, it was just, you don't really know who you are. You don't really have a purpose. And I think for any man, when a man has no direction, has no purpose, is easily influenced by people, that is your lowest point. For me anyway. Because it's like, what do you do now? Again, as I said, I was still young, so I didn't experience, for example, like divorce or anything like that. But at the same time, for me, there's certain things in life that push you to seek help. And for me, it was, I don't know who I am. That's the first thing. I don't really know where I'm going. I don't know what I want to do with my life per se. It's very easy to be influenced by people around you, by friends negatively, because there was a lot of negative influence around me at that time.
For example?
Just friends that, for example, they're really into music, they want to get you into that lifestyle, and with that lifestyle comes, your domino effect. So if you get exposed to women, you get exposed to sex, you get exposed to alcohol, you get exposed to all this kind of different things, which is not really what would have been ideal for me. So for me, I just needed somewhere that could guide me, because I remember I didn't have a father figure to do that. I didn't have a father figure to, tell me, okay, Michael, go down this road. Or, when I was facing all those language barriers, which led to bullying at school, I didn't have a father figure to comfort me or to guide me or to give me some form of direction. So I basically had to do everything by myself. My mum may have been there, but she was so busy working. There were times I would go maybe a week and a half and 2 weeks, I wouldn't see her at a very young age. So living at home, I was practically at a very young age living at home by myself. So there was a point you're like, I need to do something about my life. I need to find out where I'm going. I need to have purpose. I need to just find out who I really am and who I want to be. So that for me, I believe was, I would say, my lowest point for me.
Okay, so you're watching the story of Michael, and we're gonna go now to a short break. Don't go anywhere, stay tuned. Invite a friend, send them a text message. Remember, you could be saving one life. I'm sure that you might know somebody whose life can totally relate to what Michael is saying here. Okay, and if you've got any questions, or if you want any direction, or if you'd like a prayer on your behalf, by all means, we got a phone line. You can call. The number is 020-7686-6300. Alternatively, you can send an email to help@finances.tv. We are also on social media. And actually, if you'd like to watch one of the previous shows of Finances in HD quality, just go to YouTube. And then on the search bar, type for Finances. You're going to come across our channel. subscribe to it, and there you're going to find all the previous episodes of the show. Okay, we are also on Facebook and Instagram. Just search for Finding Answers. So go to a break now, and after the break, Michael will be here resuming his story. Welcome back to Finding Answers. Towards the end of this show, we're going to be saying a prayer here for you, okay? So you can already prepare a glass of water or a bottle of water, whichever you like, and then stay tuned because a very special prayer will be said on your behalf, for your family, for yourself, for your peers. And now, going back to your story, so Michael, how did your life change? I mean, because, you know, you have disclosed how bad your life was, you know, coming to a foreign country, facing the barrage language, going through bullying. A lot of things might have happened to you. The absence of a father figure. I mean, right, things just went crazy from bad to worse. Now, people are now curious, our viewers, and they want to find out. They are wondering, okay, how did the life of these young men change? What did he do?
So I was invited to this place of worship by a friend of mine, and I didn't take long to go because I knew the state of my life. So I ran there, not literally, but when I did visit there, it was different. It was different to what I was used to, and I think for me the priority was, as I said earlier, it was more dealing first with the internal things. So dealing with the lack of confidence, dealing with the insecurities, dealing with the complexes, dealing with, you know, how I felt about not growing up with a father figure, and, you know, forgiving him. So many different things I had to deal with first. And, you know, alongside being invited to this place of worship, I was also invited to this youth group, which was, I guess, really specialized in helping young people deal with those issues there and then. And by no means did it take overnight. It took time. It took time. It took a number of years because as you grow up, you also develop other issues. So it's always having to deal with that. So I spent some time coming to this place of worship, learning first of all how to deal with, you know, the issues of maybe insecurities. I started learning how to start believing in myself, you know, and I guess also understanding that when you believe in yourself, this is the results you can achieve from it. Because I'm sure there's a lot of people, and I actually spoke to quite a few people this week, that, you know, when you speak to them, it's like you can tell there's a real lack of self-esteem inside a lot of people, and even people watching the show might feel the same way. I don't believe in myself. That's why I don't go for certain goals that I have, or go for, you know, a job that I see. And that's an issue I really had to tackle. I had to really get over the language barrier, you know, in terms of just even the way I spoke. I never used to speak like I'm speaking now, ever. I was really mocked, like, for the way I spoke. So my accent was so, like, very bad. That's what led to the bullying. So I had to get rid of that completely. I had to obviously, you know, kind of let go of the fact, yeah, I didn't grow up with a father figure, but I'm not going to let that stop me from achieving my dreams. I'm not going to let that stop me from becoming the man that I wanted to be. And especially in this place of worship that I went to, there were a lot of men there that I could look up to. And I guess that was the important thing. You know, I had guidance. I had, you know, men there I could potentially look to as a father figure. Mm-hmm. So I guess then that made things easier in the sense that, okay, I like the way this man behaves. I like his conduct. I like his character. I like the way he speaks, and so on and so forth. So I want to try this. I want to imitate it. I want to see if it works out there. And it did. So that was the first step that I took. I came regularly to this place of worship. That's the first step. The second step was actually retaining the information that I learned, not forgetting about it, and actually going outside and put it into practice. So, for example, there were certain meetings I would attend, and it was very, very motivational, and I would feel like going out and then going to apply for certain jobs I didn't want to maybe apply for because I didn't feel qualified to. And that's the kind of, and I believe that's the kind of confidence you get when you start to believe in yourself a lot more. You start to believe, you know what, it doesn't matter that I don't have this qualification, but I know what I can bring to the table. So then it becomes a thing of understanding your value as a man. And over a few months, over some years, that really, really developed, and I started to become the kind of man I wanted to be. And with that comes the respect of your peers. So the same people that were maybe bullying me were now people that were looking up to me and coming to me for advice, which was strange. So can you see? So that's clearly those are the steps that I took. I came to this place of worship regularly. I made sure that I understood exactly what I guess the message was in the seminars that I attended. Mm-hmm. Understood exactly what I needed to do in terms of making it very, very practical and applicable for my life, because everyone can, a lot of people went to those seminars. Everyone takes different things. So I had to take what was relevant for me and then take it outside and actually then put it into practice.
But you see, Douglas, as he's talking about, for example, he started believing that he could apply for jobs that he was not even qualified, right? But that's the greatness of faith. It makes the person to believe, in himself. It gives, of course, it boosts the self-esteem, the self-esteem, of course. And it gives that belief that you can achieve things that before you thought, no, that's not for me, this is impossible. But that's what the Word of God says, that by faith all things are possible, right?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
And that's exactly it. That is exactly it, as Carlos
and,
said.
and another thing that you mentioned, I believe is good to stress upon here as well. You said that you were able to forgive your father, something that you had not mentioned before. Was it hard?
I guess when you hear the stories of, that my mom would say, because she didn't really paint him in the best light, in all honesty. But I had to, because in this place I was going to, I was learning that I couldn't move forward in my life if I didn't learn to be, not just to forgive my dad, but to be a forgiving person. So I didn't only learn to forgive my dad, I had to be a forgiving person, period. So that process, I think, it took time, but not too long, because I guess, because things were moving forward and I was seeing results, I felt like, hey, if I forgive my dad, I'm going to see the results of it. It's only going to benefit me. So I did it. It wasn't too hard, but I did it. And we're fine. We're absolutely fine. There's no animosity. There's no grudges, nothing like that.
How is your life today?
How's my life? It is great. But I'll be specific. And since we were talking about, our financial life and so on. So when I graduated, I graduated with a really, really good degree at one of the top universities in the country. And things, I'm not gonna paint a perfect picture here. Things are never easy. Things are always going to be a challenge. But as I said earlier, it's the seminars I went to that taught me about me valuing myself and me believing myself, which then led to me, after graduating, being able to go for things and go to interviews and do really, really well at those interviews because of the seeds that I planted in those seminars in me. So the confidence I gained, the lack of self-belief completely gone, the lack of self-esteem completely gone. So I guess I just learned to really, value myself. And when you value yourself, you can sit in front of anyone out there and they will know that this is someone I can trust because they know who they are.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I made that investment in my younger years when I came to this place of worship. So in terms of how my life is today, I graduated and things were challenging at the beginning. I got a first job, which went okay, but for unforeseen circumstances, I was made redundant. Then about a week later, because of network and because I'm a people person in general, I remember I walked out the door and I just picked up the phone, and within a few minutes I had interviews in so many different places. So I started another job about 2 weeks later. Again, unforeseen circumstances, made redundant. I said, you know what? I need to break the cycle. This needs to end. So eventually, I wasn't, to me, but it got to a point in my career in the last 3 years, I stopped going online and applying for jobs. I didn't need to because of what I'd done in the past, because of achievements I had made in previous jobs. People were happy to do that for me. Besides, out there's an industry where people make money from finding you a job. So I just said, hey, it's just much easier. So long story short, I had a recruiter send me to this job in the city in London Bridge. Had two interviews with them. And after my second one, I thought, there's no way I'm getting that. It was terrible. But to my surprise, they said, hey, we want to give you a job. So, I broke that cycle of, every 5 months, 6 months, made redundant. I was there for about a year and 8 months. A very, very successful tenure, by the way. And I guess that's where I really built my name. So even when I was working there, I had people, getting in contact with me that I'd never met saying, hey, we heard about you. And I'll never forget this message. There was a guy that messaged me on LinkedIn, and it's like, I heard your name in the market. You're a really hot candidate at the moment. We want to talk to you. And that's the kind of thing that happens, when you're someone that you've really worked on yourself, you're someone that values yourself, and then that comes across in your work. People hear and they want you to come in and they want you to work for them. So I was there for a year and 8 months, and I felt, you know what? It's time to go. So it's really important to note, in my last jobs, I was kicked out, essentially. But this time, I was the one that decided it was time to go. There's a big difference there, from someone that loses job and someone that says, okay, I've done everything I can for you. It's time for me to move on to bigger and better things. So I left around February 2018. Again, I was headhunted as well by a lady, and she sent me to this, this technology startup that was based in the States, in San Francisco, Silicon Valley. It's the home of technology. That's where the likes of Facebook are, and Google, and all these really, really big familiar tech companies. And yeah, I went to the interview, had 2 interviews or 3, did really, really well. This one was particularly, I was really sure that this job I really got it because of my faith in God, I would say, because for me, well, just in general, in terms of my age, I'm 24. In terms of my age, in London, I'm probably the top 0.5% earning what I'm earning in London. You don't find a 24-year-old in London. Well, you rarely find a 24-year-old in London on the salary I'm on. So that was really, really amazing, because before the start of the year, that was one of the goals I set for myself. Mm-hmm. I said, God, this is what I want to earn. But then God gave me a job that actually exceeded what I wrote, which was amazing. They flew me out to San Francisco. I spent about a week there. Now I'm just, how's my life today? I love my job. I'm doing really, really well. My first 3 months, I got promoted in my first 3 months. Things went really, really well. My company respects me a lot. They value my opinion as an employee.
Do you have inner peace?
Of course.
You do.
Of course.
Do you sleep well at night?
Oh, perfectly. Too much, actually.
That's amazing. Meaning, so it's not just about the financial success. No. It's not just about earning good money, but also, about the inner success, right, as a person. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I believe this is just the tip of the iceberg.
It is.
If you remain faithful to God, He will add a lot more to you.
Definitely.
Okay? So we will now go to the segment Answer Your Questions. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Find the Answers, and this is a segment where we answer your questions. If you've got any question and you'd like one of us to answer your question, all you need to do is to send an email to help@findtheanswers.tv, and we'll be more than happy to answer your question. We've got a question here from Louise, Stock-on-Trent, she asks the following question. I read the Bible and try to follow its teachings. Why aren't things working out better for me?
Well, Luis, in the first place, I would strongly suggest you don't try to follow the Bible's teachings. Follow it for sure, so that you can see, the fulfillments of God's promises in your life. However, Luis, we know this very well, Douglas, that many people like Luis, many people misunderstand when it comes to the way that God works, because they believe I'm reading the Bible, I'm following, I'm obeying, I'm doing this, I'm going to a place of worship or whatever. Why my life is not changing? But we believe, Douglas, that it's not about magic. It's not about, like using a magic wand and everything is going to be there overnight. God has a plan. We have to trust that He is in control. For example, the Word of God says, be still and know that I am God. And He said this for a reason, exactly because, there are times when we don't see the answer there and then. We have to trust that He's in control. We have to trust, we have to believe that whatever He's allowing us to go through is for our own good, right?
Exactly. And one thing that I think it's important, to mention here, Carlos, is the fact that people generally, human beings, they have expectations and they usually think, well, I've got a plan, I set a plan, and God is going to work exactly the way I want, whenever I want. And it doesn't always happen like that. For example, in my journey with God, I've been with God now for 20 years, and I can tell you that most of my prayers got answered, and they didn't happen the way I planned, but they happened for a better end. And now I know why things took so long, in my way of judging time. They didn't take long. They came at the right time. Because as you said, I remained still not in the sense of doing nothing about it, but in the sense of trusting, right? Yes. We need to trust.
Yes, exactly. And don't forget that God, He works everything in a way which is for the good, for the benefits of those who love Him. So it's not that God has not answered your prayer. What we believe is that the very first time, the very first moment you set your heart, your mind to talk to God, to pray, He answered your prayer. Except that you may not have seen it yet with your physical eyes, you are not able to touch, but that doesn't mean that God has not answered your prayer. He has answered, and in the right time, the blessing will come.
Exactly. And then when the answer comes, it will be something solid.
Yes, exactly, because imagine, for example, we have heard testimonies of people. The great testimonies that we have heard, Douglas, are not from people who said, I came to a place of worship, my life was destroyed, was completely upside down, and then the next week, everything was there for me. No, absolutely not. The great testimonies, or the best testimonies that we have heard, come from people who said, I persevered, it was hard, a lot of obstacles came, a lot of problems, but I had to endure, to persevere.
It didn't happen overnight.
Exactly. So, you see, having said this, Luis, be still and know that He's God.
That's it. Well, and talking about testimonies, we are going to show now one more testimony, which is the evidence, which is the proof that the power of faith works. Okay? Stay tuned.
I wasn't happy, but I didn't know why. I didn't know who I was. I would do things and think that I was going to have all this happiness, but it would just lead to me being lost. Although I was interested in God and I used to pray even, I didn't really actually know how to use my faith. I got to the age of about 24 and I still just didn't really have any direction. And I think this is where I kind of hit rock bottom and I didn't really know what to do. I thought I had faith. I thought that I was doing what God wanted me to do. But at the same time, there was no intelligence in it. There was no understanding of the word of God. And that's what intelligent faith means to me. And then I met someone. So when I kind of went with her and I started to open up more, I started to read my Bible, I started to listen to even preachings, words from a man of God that were words of faith and that taught me how to use my faith to move my life forwards. That was the best thing that ever happened to me. I started to have a vision for my life that I never had before. I had my own identity. I started to find out who Candice was and who Candice could be. It's like me and God are a team, and there's things that I need to do, and there's things that I need to understand about God, and I need to take action on it. And that's when I started to see the results, and that's how the results continue. I'm still on my amazing journey, but I literally never believed that I could be the woman that I am today. And even this week, I've been thanking God for the things that He's done in my life.
What an amazing testimony. You see, one more story of somebody who discovered the genuine and transformational power of faith. They put that faith into practice, and obviously they have harvested amazing results. And the same can happen to you, because God doesn't play favorites. God is willing to help anybody. So, regardless of your race, skin color, ethnic group, country, nationality, it does not matter. God does not play favorites. And this is very good, Carlos, to know that God, unlike people, He doesn't play favorites. He doesn't change people by their skin color.
And talking about this, I remember the testimony of our guest tonight, because he mentioned that one of the difficulties that he had was exactly to adapt to his new life here in the UK, because he came from Africa, and his friends kind of began to bully him, and because he was from another country, because of his accent, the way that he spoke, and so on. But God doesn't work this way. God, of course, regardless, the skin color, your language, regardless, whatever, your culture, your background, where you grew up, what really matters is when you are sincere. And that's what we strongly recommend when we pray for you, is that you be sincere. No matter what you are going through, as long as you are sincere, we believe that God will answer your prayer.
God will certainly answer the prayer. Now, that's very important that you mentioned about answering prayer, because in the previous segment, we answered here a question of a lady who was inquiring, why things were taking so long, in her point of view, based on her judgment, why God was taking so long to deal with her matter. But the truth is, Carlos, God doesn't offer a quick fix. Like, if people really want a quick fix, yes, we can find a quick solution on drugs, alcohol, clubbing, partying. However, all these things are provisional, temporary solutions, but they don't offer a solid, real life, permanent solution.
Yes, exactly. What God wants to do is, like you mentioned, is not something temporary. It's not just for now. Actually, He's looking at the big picture. He's looking at your life tomorrow and years to come. And of course, and the main aim is to save your soul.
For this reason, we invite you now to join us. You're going to use your faith now. You might have had time to prepare a glass of water or a bottle of water, whichever you prefer, because now we are going to talk to God. It's the moment of prayer.
Prepare now for the moment of prayer. If you would like us to make a prayer concerning your family and loved ones, send your name and prayer request to help at findinganswers.tv.
Lord God, you are the creator, the maker of all we see. You are so big, it's just not possible to try to measure your greatness, your glory. Nevertheless, you still inclined to our petitions, to our needs. Oh Lord, your eyes are now on those who feel afflicted, those who feel desperate, those who are in great despair, those who watch me now and they have gone through hell. They simply don't know what to do. They simply don't know what to do next because they tried almost everything in their power to solve their problem. But the problem still persists. They have this life-threatening disease that is killing them little by little. They have this financial debt, which is like a snowball that it doesn't stop rolling, but it keeps getting bigger and bigger. And they simply don't know what else to do. This parent who struggles to put food on the table because they've got no idea what they can do to increase their income. This viewer, Lord, who's got an immigration problem. They migrate to this country hoping that they were going to have a new life, a prominent future, but things went wrong and now they've got this immigration problem where they are not allowed to work, they are not allowed to study, and they cannot afford to go back home because the conditions at home are terrible, and this person feels desperate. They've been seeking out for a solution. This person has been to many places, religions, churches, temples, palm readers, so many other sources or resources that this person tried and they achieved absolutely nothing. Oh my God, but now they turn to you. They turn to you with a sincere approach, with a sincere heart. And though their words are little, they can't speak much because they are not used with a verbal prayer. But the little words that come out of their lips, they are meaningful. They mean it. It comes from their soul. Hear now, Lord. Hear now the outcry of this creature and answer them. Answer them. Remove the dark clouds that compromise the judgment of this person. Remove the fear, the terror, the nightmares, the worries, the panic attacks, the anger. This person who has been made redundant, lost their job, and they are about to have their property repossessed. Oh my God, come and inspire this person. Give them an idea. Give them a solution. Not magic, because we know you're not going to do any magic, but you offer real life solutions. And when this person drinks from this glass of water, Lord, let them have the strength they don't have. Let them have this strength so that they may know what to do and the solution will appear. This is what I pray in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. And if you agree with this prayer, you may now take a sip of this water. Believe that God has answered this prayer. If you're sincere, if you meant the words that you have just spoken, God is with you. And now He is working. But of course, don't just rely on the prayer. Seek help. May God bless you abundantly. Stay safe.
This program is brought to you by UCKG.